Today on the news and why it matters, there's a whistleblower on the whistleblower. Yeah, we'll break it down for you. And also, the Supreme Court is now going to allow families of Sandy Hook shooting victims to sue gunmaker Remington. What are the ramifications of that? Got a lot coming up, and it starts right now. Welcome to the news and why it matters. I am Sarah Gonzalez. I feel like we should play track The Boys Are Back in Town right now for this episode because the boys are back in town. We've got Glenn Beck, Stu Bergier, and Jason Buttrell along for the ride today. Thank you guys for being here. I feel like it's been years.
We have been working on, I'm working on a book, the Arguing with Socialists, that we have to have done by Friday and turned into the publisher. And so that's been going crazy. And we're doing the special tomorrow, the Democrats' Hydra, which is so intensive. I've had the think tank and my office just humming for the last couple, and I'd go from one to another. The think tank is the special, this one's the book, and going back and forth. And we're hopefully going to be announcing something really cool on Monday as I go on the road on Monday. So we've been busy. Yeah, very, very busy. Before we get into the conversation, we want to thank our sponsor, American Financing, who came to you, Glenn, before the crash in 2008? Yeah, wanted me to do voicing for him, and I said I don't do mortgage companies because I don't believe in mortgage companies. I mean, I obviously use mortgage companies, but I don't think that, any of them are like, hey, golly gee, we're going to take care of you. They're more like, we're going to take care of you, yes. And it's a family-owned and operated place. I told them, when the crash happens, they're like, no, we agree with you about the crash. It's going to happen because all of the banks are so greedy. I said, well, call me after the crash. I did. They weren't affected. Their customers weren't affected. And that's when I started doing commercials for them. So they will take care of you, and it'll be like this. Gee, we'll take care of you. We got you covered coast to coast. It's American Financing. You can go to AmericanFinancing.net or you can call 800-906-2440. All right. A newly filed complaint to the intelligence community, Inspector General, says that the whistleblower, so Eric Ciaramella, right?
Ciaramella.
Thank you. Ciaramella.
By the way, we are offering, free advertising for any restaurant that, any Italian restaurant that offers like linguine ciaramella. It's got to be a legitimate recipe, but we will advertise for you.
So this new whistleblower allegation says that Eric Ciaramella is accepting anonymous GoFundMe money, and that is in violation of what, as Jason pointed out, just being in the intelligence community, you're not allowed to accept gifts.
Yeah, right? I mean, that's one of the biggest things that can get your security clearance axed and get you not thrown in prison, but probably just kicked out of the intelligence community or CIA or whoever you're working for.
So that's what the complaint says. It says that he's accepted donations from about 6,000 individuals.
And also 6,000 individuals. And also what they're going to have to do now, since this was filed, is they're probably going to have to subpoena the GoFundMe and find out if they find one of those is not a U.S. citizen. Now he might go to prison for that one, actually.
Really?
Yeah, you accepting.
Wouldn't that be a strange turn of events?
Accepting a gift from outside the country, well, he can't like Ukraine or something like that.
He's not going to be able to figure out who's donating to him and their address on GoFundMe.
Well, it's not really going to him, right? It's his law firm.
Yes.
And so they're going to.
I'm sure he's got a way around this.
It seems like a bizarre
puppet show.
Well, that's what I told Jason off air. I just said this one kind of just seems like a little tattletale.
I like it. I actually like this. Whoever this whistleblower is, I love you. Because, I mean, here's a guy who is in the intelligence community as well, who's like, wait a minute, hang on. He's raising money, $500,000 for what? He doesn't need defense. Does he?
Right, he's protected by the whistleblower statutes, right?
Yeah, he's protected by everybody. They are actually scrubbing Facebook of all mentions of him. This guy's being erased from history. Eric Ciaramella is his name.
I like this is a weird trend, though. It almost sounds like a gang movie. This like whistleblower on whistleblower crime. Drive-by whistleblowing, something like that. Isn't coming near you.
Glenn, what do you think is going to happen tomorrow with all of the impeachment hearings starting, the public impeachment hearings, I should say?
If I were orchestrating this, I would, as the Republicans, I would ask all of the questions that I'm not allowed to ask. So they're going to question, and then I'd say, great. May I ask you, Mr. Ambassador, can you tell me what was happening with this NGO and how much money did they get from USAID? Out of order, you can't answer that question. Don't answer that question. I would just continue to ask all of the questions that they won't allow me to ask, because somebody's got to show that this truly is the closest America has ever come since the witch trials of the Inquisition. It's staged. This is what do they call it, a telephone trial? The old Soviet telephone trials, they were show trials, but as it got tougher, the judge had a phone by it, and at that time, Stalin could call, anybody could call and say, I'm telling you now, stop the trial, he's guilty. You're guilty? Case closed. That's what would happen. This is that situation for the first time that I've ever seen in America.
Yeah, I mean, there's approximately a 0% chance he does not get impeached by this, right? It's just the Democrats doing a political thing. I think what you'll get out of it tomorrow is a couple good moments probably for Democrats and a couple good moments for Republicans, and both will act as if the other sides didn't occur. You know, you come out and you talk about your positive things. They'll be able to get, you know, for example, there's testimony already of Taylor saying that this policy towards Ukraine was improved by Donald Trump, that he actually sent weapons that they desperately needed to protect them against the Russians. That doesn't fit the narrative of CNN.
Which Obama had sent what previously? Blankets?
Blankets. They said blankets, but I mean it was like basic aid, no military stuff.
But what's fascinating is the New York Times today did a whole piece on how the State Department, Trump was blowing up the State Department's policies and how important military aid was to the Ukrainians so they could defend themselves against Russia. Well, if that's true, why wasn't the Obama administration giving them military aid? Gave them nothing but Band-Aids and blankets. It was Trump that came in and said, we're going to give you the Javelin systems, which will kill all of their tanks. It was Trump that did that. And then Trump comes out and says, oh, by the way, internally, all these people are corrupt. I want nothing to do with them. They're all corrupt. That's when Rudy Giuliani comes to the table and says, yes, they are. And have you seen what they're saying we've been doing to them? That's fascinating.
Yeah.
One more thing on the show trial aspect of this, which is totally true. They've already interviewed all these people. They've already gone after them and asked them questions, and they've released transcripts of these things. Like this
also,
is
we have the transcript of the phone call.
well, that's true too.
We don't need someone's opinion on what they think Donald Trump's intentions were, right?
I would think not, but I mean you have that backs up the evidence, right? But they've already asked them these questions. So now what they're doing is like they've got a script for their play. They all know how they're going to answer the questions, and now these people are going to walk out in front of the American people, have the same questions asked largely to them, and they're going to answer them the same way. And they're not going to ask the questions that didn't work out the first time. They're going to ask the ones that did work out the first time for them. I mean, how silly is this? It is a ridiculous process. Now, that doesn't mean that the Republicans might not catch him in something. Some different evidence comes out as possible, but this is largely for show.
That's why I think that I'm not too sure if this goes to the Senate. I don't know if Nancy Pelosi even green lights it to continue on, because pretty much everything that they want that is the most damaging, it's already come out. That's why we're due to this is part 2 of a really bad first movie. We already know what's going to happen. It's like a Friday the 13th movie.
But they're already on board saying they support the impeachment, right?
Yeah.
So
well, I mean,
all they have to do is cast the vote. They can go to their people and say, look, we got it done. They can go to the AOCs of the world. We got them impeached.
But then when you think about all the bad things that will come out when it gets to the Senate, then it's the other.
So is there a possibility that Nancy Pelosi is playing this to squash the left side of the party? I mean, it's a dangerous
big
game,
gamble,
big gamble. But look, you got Schiff, who's running this thing. You have the left, who's pounding it. All right, go, do it. And we even passed it. You lost it in the Senate? I mean, Is that, I don't think so, but is that even possible?
I wouldn't think so. I'm kind of with you on that. It doesn't. It seems like a very big risk, and if it doesn't, like I think what
it does, but it also might add a little bit of credibility to why she all of a sudden reversed course, right? Because for a year she's like, no, we're not doing this. No, we're not doing this. No, we're not doing this. Oh, okay, we'll do it here, even though we have no evidence.
I think she did that because of what we have up on the chalkboard, and more importantly, what we're going to show you tomorrow night. This is part of something much, much bigger. And Nancy Pelosi answers to those people.
Well, let me ask you this, Glenn, while we're on the topic of the Democrats' Hydra that you're doing tomorrow. I have trouble understanding, you know how Adam Schiff came out and he said, yes, we should hear from the whistleblower. Yes, he should, he should testify. Yes, he should. And then all of a sudden he changed and said, no, we don't want him to testify.
Do you remember when that was? 5 days after our first special. 5 days after our first special. Not saying that that's what happened, but that's awfully coincidental because people on Capitol Hill, I talked to them that week and they told me everyone's talking about this. Everyone's talking about this. So yeah, we got to have he's absolutely right. 5 days after our special, he says, this whistleblower is not important. We have another whistleblower. This one isn't important and this one we don't need to know. Really?
Great reminder to all of you to make sure to tune in tomorrow night for the Democrats' Hydra. It is Wednesday at 8 Eastern, 7 Central. You can use promo code GB20OFF to save $20 off of your annual subscription. Listen, we're telling you guys this. The mainstream media is not going to tell you.
Yeah.
Glenn's telling you.
And let me ask you this. Is there any doubt in your mind, as the two of the guys who have vetted this, any doubt in your mind? We pulled a lot of stuff off the table because we want to make sure it's absolutely accurate. Are we taking any chances at all?
On everything we've laid out so far?
Yeah.
No, not at all.
Hydra.
No,
Yeah.
not at all.
No, we have all of it. I talked to a producer and I sent them the information without all of the clips and everything else we have. And they read it and they said, Glenn, you have to have, and I said, oh, no, we have everything to back that up. You have the documents? Oh, we have the documents, not just from their companies or whatever, from them. We have all of it.
It's written in their own hand.
Yeah, it's crazy that these people wrote this stuff down, but they did. And already the Congress and the media are already saying anything that happened prior to 2017 is all discredited, what do they call it? Conspiracy theories. It's not. A conspiracy theory is, hey, I wonder if this happened. That's a conspiracy theory. A conspiracy fact is one that shows the conspiracy with all the documentation. That's what we have.
Well, we'll see what happens to all of those untouchables in Washington tomorrow night. Back in a minute.
We should drop this conspiracy fact. We should. The theory is, you're right, we shouldn't do it in theory.
Before we get back into the conversation, we want to thank our sponsor, Relief Factor, which you're coming off on a 2-year anniversary?
2-year anniversary of taking Relief Factor. Take it 3 times a day, and I feel fantastic because of it. Let me tell you this. You know who's going to need a little inflammation relief tomorrow night? George Soros. I'm just saying, I could send you a pack of it. You might even want to take more than directed and then rub it all over your head because you're going to have a throbbing headache tomorrow. Relief Factor. It's a great way to get rid of your pain. Take it as directed. Works for 70% of the people who take it for 3 weeks. So try their 3-week quick start. And chances are you're going to be taking it like I do all the time because it works. ReliefFactor.com.
So the Supreme Court has turned down a request from the gun industry that was intended to block a lawsuit from the families of the Sandy Hook victims.
Bad.
Yes. So just to kind of break down the facts surrounding this case, obviously there is a federal law that prohibits people from holding gun manufacturers liable for people who are using it illegally to kill people, malicious intent. They are not liable.
You say obviously, but it seems less obvious right now.
Right,
But
I
mean,
know.
How do you sue a manufacturer for a product that worked as prescribed?
That's what I don't get. I mean, I would sue if it didn't do what, like
Right,
if it
I'm
didn't
standing there and I'm
hurt the
trying to
person.
stop you as an aggressor. It's click, 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 click.
Right.
My family should sue you.
Yeah.
It blows up in my face. My family should sue you. If the gun was being used by the individual as prescribed by the manufacturer, how can you?
You have to make it illegal, or make the gun illegal. Then go ahead, try.
Well, so here's how they got around it. So it was of course, the Connecticut Supreme Court who ruled, I believe it was 4-3, that they could go forward with this lawsuit. The gun industry, as I said, repealed it. So their angle was that Remington's advertisements for the AR promoted unethical and illegal use of the weapon because it cited multiple ads that depicted the gun not as a tool of home defense, hunting, or sport, but as a weapon of war meant to kill a large number of people in a small amount of time. They advertised the gun as a, quote, ultimate combat weapons system used by the armed forces in theaters of war.
It is. So that's true. So should Remington lie? I mean, it's used by the military in a theater of war. Are you in the theater of war, or are you in a classroom? I mean, this is ridiculous.
It's scary because
really scary.
they're going to get very, very creative with taking away your Second Amendment. It's that Second Amendment thing's real pesky and hard to deal with because it's
We're
really
not gonna
hard to
touch
get
the
rid of.
Second Amendment.
I'm not going to touch
The
it.
court system just said that you have a right to sue. And you know what? You should probably have some insurance. And that insurance will be absolutely unmanageable. The companies won't make it because they can't afford the lawsuits. It all stops. And never touch the Second Amendment.
And Stu, to Glenn's point, the managing director of litigation for Everytown, who is the one who's promoting this lawsuit, he said gun manufacturers throughout the country should be on notice that they'll need to answer for their reckless business practices in the courts.
I mean, this is the thing. I mean, the case is completely ridiculous. We all realize you can't sue Ford if someone decides to run over a bunch of people at a street fair. That's not the issue here. The reason why this is a big ruling is because the strategy is not to win these lawsuits. The strategy is to bring these lawsuits, dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of them. They will try to bankrupt. They will basically try to bankrupt the gun industry by just suing them and them having to deal with so many different lawsuits that they can't function anymore. And it'll put certainly a lot of smaller gun manufacturers out of business very quickly.
So tomorrow, by the end of the special, we are tipping our hat on what we're going to show you in January. And we're only waiting on this because we have actual American law enforcement involved. And we are in on something that is happening, and so we're waiting for them. But you will see the grand scheme that is happening by the end of I'm not going to put your face in the water, but you'll be close enough to do it yourself so you can drink. You will see how all of this is being done and why this is being done. Court system, justice system, the Hydra is here. It is here.
So in regards to this particular case, does it surprise you at all that the Supreme Court just declined to review the ruling?
Shocks me.
I mean, there's
remember
a
this
federal law.
evil right-wing conservative Supreme Court doesn't even take up
How many votes?
a case like this.
How many votes to take it up?
It was one. It was like 4-3 or something like that.
Yeah. I believe that's correct. There was one. Yeah, so just...
Thank you, John Roberts.
Moving on to 2020, Deval Patrick, former Massachusetts governor, is considering making a late run for the Democratic presidential nomination.
Let's just start announcing people that aren't running. That's the only thing we can do at this point. I mean, what is this? Why is this happening?
Because look who they have out there right now. I'd be tempted too.
Why don't we just get somebody and put a blue dot over their face and say, hey, that unknown person's running for president. I bet that unknown person would win on the field that is left with the Democrats.
Well, okay, and then you've got Michael Bloomberg, who has
I'm not fully convinced Bloomberg is running yet. Are you? I mean, he's such a scammer with this stuff. And all he had to do, he did file in Alabama to put himself on the ballot. But I mean, if you think you're Michael Bloomberg, it's like, how much do I have to spend to get myself on the ballot so I can delay this decision even further? I think Friday is the deadline for New Hampshire, so that's a big one. But again, Michael Bloomberg could get on that ballot for what, $100 grand.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, you hire a bunch of volunteers, go around and collect signatures. He could do that in 2 days. So he may continue to do this and stretch it out to see what happens. If Biden starts losing, maybe he starts getting more aggressive.
You had a good off-air observation today that you thought Biden and Bloomberg would be a good ticket.
Yeah, well, I mean, a terrible ticket, let's be clear. Right?
Yeah, one that would excite the Democrat progressives.
There's a strategic advantage of Bloomberg being on the ticket, which is he can spend $50 billion on the campaign. You can't get unlimited donations from other people, but you can spend whatever you want on your campaign. Now, I think there's a case to be made, too. If I'm a Democrat, I'm going up against Donald Trump, who has nearly unlimited resources. Look, we're putting Michael Bloomberg on the ticket. He's been a successful mayor. He's good on this, and this. He's led the way on gun control and all these things. And in addition to that, he's going to be able to give us the resources we need to compete with the evil billionaires that are going to try to shut us down. Donald Trump's got all this money. The only time this has ever really been attempted was the Libertarians tried it back in, I want to say it was 1980, and their presidential candidate was Clark, I believe, Ed Clark, but their vice presidential candidate was one of the Koch brothers, and they brought them on with so he could spend and spend and spend, and it was, other than this last election where Gary Johnson did relatively well for Libertarians, it was the highest amount of votes they've ever had their entire party's history. It didn't make them win, but it does, if you can open up the floodgates and imagine Biden coming out and saying, who's a terrible fundraiser, by the way. Biden's bad at fundraising. He needs help. Him coming out and saying, look, we've decided not to take any donations from anyone. Mike's got it, and put him on the ticket and we're going to go for it.
Can you imagine, from this diverse party, that you end up with 2 old white guys and one's a billionaire?
It's going to be tough to do it.
Yes,
it's going to be a tough sell.
Actually, I can imagine. I can. You think that's a tough sell? I think there are a lot of talk, but when it comes down to it, they don't actually care about all of that.
They're going to vote for whoever the Democrat is anyway, right? I think Bloomberg would be a tough sell with Biden in that way. Tulsi is absolutely going for either vice president or a cabinet. I think she wants to be Secretary of Defense.
If there was one person in the country I would want to watch this special tomorrow and be able to monitor it, it would be Tulsi Gabbard. Because I think Tulsi, I've read a lot of things that Tulsi's been saying lately, and I'm like, I think she either knows a lot of this or suspects this. And I think she'd be against all of this stuff. I really think that if we could get a Democrat like Tulsi to say, this should stop, the whole climate would change.
She's up in the polls, too.
Yeah. Hillary tried to destroy her and failed.
Hillary is only good at wrecking her own campaign.
Yes.
Which I guess we'll find out on Friday. If she's actually going to put her hat into the ring, which I don't believe she is.
Do we trust any of the polls right now? I'm just like everyone's saying how awful these candidates are. We have socialists, and then we have Biden, which no one seems to like anyway, but he's the only one that's not crazy. But every single time you look at a poll, they're all beating Trump in the polls. I'm like, what?
Yeah, they just did a swing state poll of a bunch of the big swing states, and Trump was actually beating Warren but losing to Biden. Which is interesting because that was the top-ranked pollster out there. So it was an interesting study. I think that any general election matchup at this point doesn't really get you that much information, frankly. But it doesn't necessarily tell you who's going to win on the parties. I think it can only tell you which candidate on the left is going to, compete a little bit better against Trump. And it's something that I think the left is really looking at because their number one goal is to beat him at any cost.
All right, back in a minute.
I think right now people are kind of dissatisfied as long as the economy holds.
As we mentioned earlier, you don't want to miss it. Tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 Central, the Democrats' Hydra.
Hail Hydra.
The Democrats' Hydra. I can't wait. You guys would think that I would be in the know about all of this. I'm not, and I'm on the edge of my seat.
You're getting the script tonight.
I know.
Getting the script tonight. What's crazy is the attorney Riaz that said, don't worry about the whistleblower. 1 falls, 2 will rise.
Zaid, yeah.
Zaid. That's amazing because that's what Hydra says.
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Do not miss it. Also, go back to BlazeTV and rewatch the first 2. You're going to probably want, there's a lot of information going, there's a lot of dirty dealings going on. So go back to blazetv.com, use promo code GB20 off for $20 off of your annual subscription. Overtime starts next.